Chapter 16, Types of Immunity. In this last topic for this chapter, we will be learning how to contrast active versus passive acquired immunity and natural versus artificially acquired immunity. So in this topic, we're going to cover naturally acquired active immunity, naturally acquired passive immunity, artificially acquired active immunity, and artificially acquired passive immunity. Naturally acquired active immunity is the immunity that you get when you get an infection. So everything that we've talked about in the previous topics happens inside of your body, and most importantly, you achieve memory cells that are ready to go next time you experience that type of infection, next time you experience that pathogen. Naturally acquired passive immunity is where you get antibodies through a natural process, like through breastfeeding when you're a little itty bitty baby, or through the placenta while you're a fetus. There are no memory cells produced, but the baby is protected by antibodies produced by the mother. Hopefully, as the baby becomes exposed to antigens, the baby produces its own antibodies and its own memory cells and cytotoxic T cells while being protected by the passive antibodies. It's kind of like a natural vaccination. Speaking of vaccinations, let's go on to artificial immunity. In other words, anything that involves usually a needle, the dreaded needle of immunizations, or in this case, an oral vaccine. This is where a pathogen or the antigens from a pathogen are introduced into the body so that we can develop active immunity, so that when you experience the pathogen for real, you don't become sick. So you're probably thinking, why in the world would we introduce a pathogen in? Well, we use what are called attenuated pathogens. These are pathogens that have been kept in the lab, have been passed through its non-preferred host, and it's become weakened. So if all goes well, you don't become sick from a vaccination, but you do develop memory cells so that you don't become sick when you run into the wild type pathogen. And of course, if there's artificially acquired active immunity, there's also artificially acquired passive immunity. So we can receive anti-sera, which is basically antibodies, or antitoxins that have been made by something else. Usually it's bunnies, also sometimes chickens. So in other words, we've vaccinated a lab animal and we produce in the factory antibodies that can be injected into somebody. So, for example, if you are exposed to large amounts of botulism toxin, your body's not going to be able to respond in enough time for you to live. So you're taken to the hospital, you're completely limp, you're having a hard time breathing because botulism toxin attacks your neurons and makes it so that they don't accept signals. Well, we can give you the antitoxin, the antibody against the toxin, so basically we can save you, we can neutralize that toxin, and then hopefully you don't experience botulism again because we don't have a vaccine for it. This also is the case for some diseases that we don't have a vaccine for. Say you get a needle stick in the hospital. We don't know where that needle's been. We don't know what kind of pathogens are on it. So we will give you a broad spectrum of antibodies. It's called a gamma globulin shot. It's also known as a peanut butter shot because it's really thick and it feels like they're injecting peanut butter into you. But this gives you passive protection while your body's developing antibodies against whatever pathogen you've been exposed to. So hopefully you don't get sick. Well, that's it for this topic, and that's it for this chapter.